Hey everyone, Hans here. Everyone's doing well. Today, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the tactics of the wretched, of those narcissists and sociopaths who find themselves in the white positive sphere. And yeah, I've had to write down a few bits. I may not actually be able to finish it all in one go, but it doesn't matter. We'll get it done either short or long, it stays in the middle. So, yeah, since the device that I use doesn't have a lot of capacity, I need to sort of hurry up, I guess. I'm gonna get right into it. First things is trauma bonding. Now, trauma bonding, I believe it is actually a term that is used in psychology, and it comes down to, I shall one name it, comes down to people, these victimizers, these wretched people who have almost no capacity for happiness or love themselves. They actually do not know how to connect with another human being out of friendship or out of empathy at all. When they want to connect with someone else, it is to gratify their own ego. Always. Every single time. They want to get something out of people, and that's the only reason they talk to others. Trauma bonding is one of these methods, if you will, one of these tactics that they apply, which they usually do with, you know, always do actually with vulnerable people. These vulnerable people can be children, because children are not physically, spiritually, or mentally capable of withstanding the abuse, or just desperate people whose people happen to be what you might call under attack. People who are mm, downtrodden. Let's go with that. Not under attack, just downtrodden. And yeah, it makes many individuals of that people sick. It disorients them or disorientates, however you say that. It leaves them vulnerable, as I said. And these wretches see that as an opportunity to take advantage. They will apply many ways, something along the lines of, let's see, uh, delivering hurt, essentially. And through the pain that they cause, they present themselves as somewhat of an authority, if you will. While also at the same time, simply the fact that they cause pain gives them a sort of pleasure, because it's a small power trip, if you will. It's a little ego trip of theirs. This can happen on the three levels that I said. It can be physical abuse, although that is far more rare. That's usually the more, it's the less intelligent, it's the dumb ones, if you will, the stupid ones among them, who go to physical violence. But most of them are more cunning than that. Their main the main way how they operate is always through deceit. They lie to people. They, yeah, it comes down to lying, practically always. And how can that manifest itself? Well, one way, I call it as such. I do not know if anyone else does. It's expectancy bashing. And what is expectancy bashing? It is giving someone a compliment and then afterwards using that compliment as a standard. They hold up a fake standard, mind you, which they then cudgel people by emotionally. How does that take place? It takes place something along the lines of, let's pretend some wretched individual sees Hans and thinks to him or herself, oh, look at Hans, he looks a bit tired, he isn't doing too well, life has him down. I'm gonna take advantage of that. But how do I do that? Well, the wretched one will show up and say, Hans, you're such a wonderful person. And then let it simmer for a week. The whole purpose of that is just to flatter my ego. Mind you, that is sort of projection on their part, right? But flatter my ego. Kinda give me a feeling that, you know, kinda take away the feeling of pain or desperation that Hans might be in, to then a week later cudgel it right back in. So, oh well, Hans, you're such a great guy, but then a week later it turns into, Hans, why didn't you do this? I asked you to do this, I asked you to do that, which are questions hidden, or demands hidden as questions, right? They may then, they demand then something along the lines of, Hans, why didn't you give money? Hans, why didn't you do more of this or that you said you would do? No? Regardless. And then of course it follows with, because I thought you were, and then the compliment from before, I thought you were a great guy. And look at you now. This is not great. You see what that would do to me if I were a person in pain. What that would mean, or that is the tactic by which they go, by which they operate, as expectancy bashing. It is to emotionally bring someone down and put themselves on top. Again, and mind you, this is emotional hurt that they inflict, right? This is something they enjoy to do. It's also a little bit of projection, because that kind of flattery is what they want to get. That is one way to go about it. I'm gonna go to the next one. Perception control. So, perception control, it is down to two levels predominantly, as I see it, which is you have the individual level, by which, how shall we describe it? They will present themselves from themselves to yourself as a certain persona. They will pretend that they are the most wonderful human being that has ever come in your life. They will call themselves a great fighter, a wonderful athlete, an excellent orator. They will call themselves the creme de la creme, the elite, whatever it's going to be. And that entire purpose is, and again, to desperate people, to those who are downtrodden, to have something like, wow, this is brilliant. I'm so lucky I came across this person. But what is its purpose? Again, it's just for this wretched individual to have to, to be able to hide the ugliness within and yet receive compliments. Then, and I'm gonna get into why they do it a bit more after. Then there is the societal level of perception control, which is, let's say, anti-whites in general, all the varying groups of this kind or the other, who will, inflict white guilt. They will smear campaign, they will tell lies, they will, they will prey on white people's empathy. That's what it always comes down to, as far as I can tell. It is, they know that naturally whiteys, they take care of others. Not even only their own group. They will take, whiteys, we will take care of the entire world if we are led to. Because that's who we are. We want to help. But what they then do with that empathy is, you don't give enough. You do not do enough. In fact, you should feel ashamed for being empathic. Etc., etc., etc. Unfortunately, through a lot of brainwashing, through a lot of wounding that our people are put through, many of us have become susceptible to it. It wasn't always like this. We aren't naturally weak or anything. No, we have just been made that way in the last, I would even say the last 3,000 years, but let's just say the last 100 or the last 20 years. Let's say the last 20 years in our lifetime, it really picked up pace again, because this goes back a long time. Now, there is also a term, what you might call a psychological term, triangulation. This is where they put themselves as a center man in a group or in society, a group of these wretched. They make themselves central in a narrative, if you will, and by extent of that, they, how shall we call it? They start putting people up against one another. They start, if it's for example, on the individual level again, it's a wretched person in a group of, you'll have a good guy and a good girl, who perhaps would be a couple, but the wretch within, in the middle, will keep them fighting each other rather than come together out of jealousy or whatever it is for attention. On a societal level, politics, plain and simple, economics, getting our people to fight each other over all manners of nonsense, if you will. Politics, I believe, is the best example. And organized religion, of course, it's also a big one. How does it manifest itself? This is something every one of us has seen. If you have not seen it, you have not looked at society. Left versus right, and then those people who believe they're special by sitting, what do they call themselves, third position or something? Yeah, guess what? That's free, somewhat vague description, but it is one that's being used in every society, right? Every white culture, if you will. And now you have our own people fighting itself over things that they otherwise actually might have agreed upon if it wasn't for the wretched in the middle keeping people off balance, keeping them picking fights with each other rather than actually talking with each other, and maybe coming to the understanding that most would actually be very reasonable with one another, whether you're on the left or the right, and the middle, I suppose, or third position, whatever they call it. What is the entire purpose of a wretch doing all of that, or the wretched in general, as cabals, if you will? They do it with the intention to, in the first place, I would say, let's see here. First and foremost, it is to keep people off balance, as I said, because people who are off balance, who are fighting with each other, are easily manipulated. And it is a very simple tactic to look through once you understand you're being, what you might say, dragged into it by a wretch or multiple of these wretches. And I would argue every one of us today is. It is, it's everywhere. It's just everywhere. A little aside, perhaps, real quick, is that these wretched evade accountability. Their own egos will never allow them to think of themselves as wrong. And that explains, I believe, a whole lot of atrocities that are happening in the world today. The wretched will burn the world down before they admit to themselves that they were ever making a mistake, or that they were ever immoral. In fact, there are some wretched who, through organized religion, actually indulge themselves in the immorality of it all. They try to make it a virtue. Such things. Maybe I can go on about that in another video, we'll see. The other one, or the other three, I suppose, who are kind of linked together, is the accumulation of resources. What does that mean? With resources like the basics: textile, shelter, food, drink, the basics, heating, or suppose cooling, depending on where you live, for comprehending, for themselves to survive. Parasitic behavior, essentially, because they do not offer a service back or anything. No, they just take. That's it. They just take. And they have no inclination to ever give anything. Their ego, it's all about themselves. Attention. To have their names written in the stars, if you will. Falling stars, but stars nonetheless, I guess. That is also something that they get a kick out of. Being seen, being heard. Doesn't matter if it's, if they are presented as obnoxious or not. The attention in itself is enough, because that gratifies their ego again. And the last one is services. That is, the services are basically getting people to do stuff for them, plain and simple, whatever it's going to be. That's perhaps more on the individual level. On a societal level, resources, what does that mean? Well, still kind of the same. It's perhaps more group based, that white people, as the example goes, have to give their resources up to the wretched, those who can't do it for themselves or just don't want to because their ego thinks that white should do it for them. Thankless as it is. As far as attention goes, this, how shall one call that? On a societal level, the attentions. Yeah, I suppose in privileges, anti-white laws becoming a thing, or becoming more and more of a thing, which of course puts the focus on these wretched groups that take advantage of these anti-white laws. This by extent of course makes all these who indulge in these laws anti-whites, right? I think we can understand that. And then we have services. The services, well, that's very broad, but it again comes down to are people basically being slaves to them in the end. We just do stuff for them and we do not even get a thank you back. In fact, it really becomes that stereotypical slave on a chain nonsense if these wretched are allowed to keep pushing what they're pushing. That's one thing of it. And of course, things such as societal appeasement, sexual appeasement, that sort of thing. I think one of these horrific examples is where a certain non-white goes in the streets and demands that all white girls kiss him on the mouth, because otherwise they are an anti-white slur. That's a perfect example of an anti-white wretch right there. Couldn't even, and what kind of individual needs to do this? Definitely not someone who can get, who has the attention of women by himself, right? It's atrocious. But it does speak about all of this. It does speak about how pathetic they are, how they really are just what word is there for it? They are you know what? No, let's leave it there. They are pathetic, and that's all there is to it. These are not people who are heroic. These are the opposite. These are people who are vile, lowly, self-serving, and they need their hand being held, specifically by those they victimize, be it on an individual level or societal, by the way. Which for the wise, for the intelligent among us, that is, I believe, quite an eye-opener, or I hope it is for many. And it's always through deceit. It's always through indirect demand, or indirectly getting things out of people. Honesty is just not part of how they operate at all. But do I want to leave on a bad note? No, not really. I always like to provide something helpful for people. So, what is the purpose of this entire video to begin with? I want people to start understanding how these anti-whites, how these scumbags operate. And they are in the white positive sphere. Do not be mistaken. There are plenty of blonde and blue-eyed scumbags like this. So let us please understand that. I personally have absolutely had it with that nonsense. That because of your looks, you're certainly absolved from all your misdeeds or your lowly motivations. Nonsense. Can we please agree to that? I hope so. I, for one, I'm just so done with it. Because I see it holds us down so much. we would be in such a better place already if we had realized this a year ago, 2 years ago. What about 5 years, 10 years, guys? Are we going to improve ourselves today, so maybe next year or 2 years after that, we can look back and say, oh, awesome, at least we started in 2020 or 2021. I hope that we can, as a group, as a people, a collective, what have you, can decide, yes, let's start today. Let's start working on ourselves and let's start understanding the ways how those who prey on us operate, how they work, how it goes, and then call them out. Have the spine to call them out, and not this. And this can be done peacefully. It can be done peacefully. But I'm gonna continue now. So, what are some curatives? How can we protect ourselves? First thing and foremost, you need to understand that someone who has done this, who is doing this, is irredeemable. They are only in it for themselves. They will fall on their knees if found out. They will pray, they will beg, they will tell you everything that they need in the moment to make you think, guess we're gonna give them a second chance. They will do it. And when the moment you let them go, it all starts right over again. They are irredeemable. Remember that, please. I would also suggest, and this is perhaps a bit of a vague one, but then again, if you're a healthy person within, if you have good instincts, they will protect you or they will warn you. If you're dealing with someone who is friendly one day, but then is insulting you the next, or even insults you and masks it as a joke or something like that, and you just have something like, that wasn't just a friend having a laugh at my, that was someone who was genuinely trying to hurt my feelings, just pretending, that it was all meant as a joke. Trust your instinct then and call that out. Don't hold back on such people. Actually go for it when someone treats you, mistreats you essentially. And ask them, hey, why did you act like that? Why were you hurting me with that? And if they then say, oh, but it was just a joke, well, I'm not laughing and neither are you, buddy. So what is it about? And their ego, they will not allow themselves to say that they were wrong. They will not apologize to you for it. And that's going to be a warning to you. And have the self-agency to say, you know what, if that's who you are, if that is what you are, I know you now for what you are. I'm gonna keep calling you out every time I see it, and I'm gonna start warning people about you. Never wanna see you again. That is a perfect method to go about it. You don't need to outtalk anyone, and you cannot outtalk anyone who is not interested in what you have to say. It's perhaps also an interesting lesson for most of us, who just keep on to talk to those who have already basically sworn to be anti-whites, if you will, or sworn to just stand for themselves. Another curative is standing up for something greater than yourself, as I see it. And it is not for me to tell anyone what that is. I know for myself, I've run across 2 of these scumbags. And I think most of you know who I'm talking about. I used to make a lot of videos with them. And, believing that they were actually decent people. But then the truth came out in the end. And one of the things that helped me out is, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this because I care about people. I know I can get flack for these videos. And I know that there are people out there who now see my face who might actually intend to hurt me. Do I get something out of it personally? Not really. Although I have met many good people, and for that I'm thankful. There are good things to it as well. But what helped me through is to remind myself of that. To be had for a year or something, let's say. I managed to be able to say to myself, well, I knew from the start I was going to take a hit, and well, here it is. And you know what? The sun still rises. Water still tastes fresh. The The birds are still chirping in the trees. And I'm gonna keep doing what I always intended to do in the first place, which is do right by my people that I care about. Anyone of a good nature, actually. But, it's like with white well-being. It's for everyone's well-being, but also for whites. I have no business meddling with non-whites as I see it. That's why my focus is on white people. Doesn't mean that, or how shall I put it? No, I'm gonna leave it there. And that is perfectly fine. The last thing I've written down is garnering self-confidence and self-reliance. And that may be tough. There are many of us who are so browbeaten that they focus only on their ills, on the flaws that they have, which we all do. But in the wake of that, I can only say, can you give yourself a pat on the shoulder too once in a while? Can you not just be able to say to yourself, you know what, I may be, in a world where they say I need to be 6'2", I am 5'3", whatever, but I'm still happy with myself, I'm still capable to do the right thing. What is more important anyways? To be able to say to yourself, you know what, it may not always be easy to climb up and become a better person, but I'm trying. Motivation matters. Trying matters. And that is a perfect reason to say to yourself, you know what, I'm actually a pretty good dude or a pretty good girl. I may bump into things, I may trip, I may fall, I may slip, but I keep getting better and I keep doing better for others too. Yeah. I think that is as far as I can go with what I've written down. Just giving it a new glance, see if I can discern something out of it more. Yeah, I think let's end it off with the purpose of the video again. I'm telling this to you guys, or girls, because I hope that you walk away after this video ends, not because Hans said it, but because, you know what, there might have been some merit in what was said here, and I've witnessed it in my own life, therefore I need to, or I can now perceive when someone is a wretch. And when you perceive that in someone, then you can call it out. And by calling it out, you will figure out if you were correct or not, in the sense that you may be mistaken too. You may think someone behaves like what I just described, and there is more to it, but get into that another time. It is that people who, if you see people who behave like such, you call it out. Maybe they do it with good intentions, but they don't know that it is obnoxious and irritating to others, etc. By calling it out, you're doing them a favor. And if they're really, really good people, they will apologize and will say, oh, guess I'll change my... Well, they may still say the same things, but they'll do it in a more polite and proper fashion, if you will. They will do it better, self-improvement. If they do not, however, if they run away, if they say, no, it's on you, or it's that guy, and why are you blaming me, blah, blah, blah. At that point, you know there is something wrong there. And now you have perhaps opened other people's eyes too. If enough of us start doing this, and we encourage others to do it as well, there may be a point in time when there's going to be a lot of, as I mentioned in other videos, charlatans, like these wretched individuals who will have a far harder time sneaking in the white positive sphere and causing havoc. I think it's not even the anti-white necessarily that really gets in their way so much as just these liars and cheats and self-serving, these selfish individuals who keep popping out of the woodwork, seeing wounded people that they can prey upon, like vultures, seeing a wounded animal that they're circling around until, the animal collapses and down they go to take advantage. Like a leech, that comes out of the swamp as a guy is just resting there at the edge of it, trying to get out of it, if you will. Maybe that's the best analogy. That can you keep the leeches off from you while you're getting out of the swamp? That is what this is for. It is providing what you might say a lifeline. It's providing a torch in the dark. Yeah. All else is for every one of us, hopefully, if not that, at least many of us, to say to themselves, I have agency in this, and to be able to say, okay, I'm gonna start calling them out if I think there is something wrong, and when then you find out one way or the other, you'll act accordingly, and then those people better act accordingly too. Anything else is just what would be a good way of putting it? Just being mindful of who you befriend and who you listen to. Can we start doing that as well? I think it's important. I needed to learn that as well. Been working on that very hard. And I like to think that for all the mistakes I've made, in the end, I'm the better for it. That's what I want for all of us. And I hope that is what you want for all of us too. I think, in this sense, I've done my part, and I'm gonna call it here. You all have a good one, and bye-bye.